Do we think Walt Disney would fly down in an Iron Man suit and like really show off? Absolutely. Happy Magical Monday, friends! Welcome back to another magical movie review with me, Magic Molly. I am a lot more prepared for today's Iron Man conversation than I was last week. Definitely trying out my hand at some Disney bounding or bounding as a character. Got my red and my gold on. I also have a Carolina Hurricanes shirt and it kind of gives me some Tony Stark vibes with just the white emblem in the middle. So we're just going with it. That's the beauty of Disney bounding. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's whatever you want it to be. So for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, I do magical movie reviews of a series. So this go round, our series is the MCU in chronological order. This is Felix. Say hello. You're very handsome. And so we've done a few so far, but this week we are on to Iron Man 2. I will start off by saying that Iron Man is probably my favorite Avenger, and I don't know if I think this is my favorite movie of his, but you'll see why. Just as a reminder, we break these videos down into 4 major sections. We do magical moments, which are things that I like about the film, themes, specific scenes that really bring me joy. We also talk about enchanting efforts, which are moments just the same on the opposite end of the spectrum, things that don't really land well with me or things that I have continued questions about. Then we select a VMP, or a very magical person, that wins the episode, and then we top it all off with the rankings of my favorite of the movies in that series thus far. So we'll jump right into it with magical moments. Of course, Robert Downey Jr. does another really great job of portraying Tony Stark as Iron Man. I mean, it's just him playing himself in a movie. Really, that's all you gotta say about that. I mean, he just does a really good job as Tony Stark. I think we can all agree. Now, the first big magical moment for me is at the beginning of the movie when Tony Stark first opens the expo. And I don't know about you guys, but it gives me very like Walt Disney vibes. Like, this is the legacy that he wants to leave. It's all about putting new technology and new ideas out there for people to see, making it more accessible to the public, which is a very Walt Disney ideology as well. I mean, that's essentially what Epcot Center was supposed to be. So I get very much of those same feelings when I watch the opening of this film, getting into the Expo Center. Do we think Walt Disney would fly down in an Iron Man suit and like really show off? Absolutely. Just like I said for the first Iron Man movie too, I really think that the Tony Stark Pepper Potts chemistry with these particular actors is really, really good. I also find it incredibly refreshing that Tony gives Pepper Potts the CEO position. Yes, you could say it's because he loves her and he wants her to be successful, but I also think that she's the most qualified. She knows the ins and outs of the business. She's basically been running it for Tony for all of these years, and now he has an opportunity to step back, and who better to do that than Pepper Potts? Of course, in the real world that probably wouldn't happen, because you're hardly ever seeing anybody's assistants being promoted to CEO. I have heard people say that that is their enchanting effort about the movie, but for me I think it's a magical moment. One, because we're in a fictional world, we could do whatever the hell we want, but also I think it's a smart decision, and she clearly does the job well throughout the movie. And of course we get an introduction to one of my other favorite Avengers, Black Widow, or Natasha Romanoff as Pepper Potts' assistant, as we think she is in the beginning of the movie. I think she does a really great job of being understated, and you think that without having any prior knowledge of the universe or anything, you think it's just another beautiful woman that Tony's gonna end up sleeping with, just another pretty face that can box, sure, but there's so many layers to her, and we see a few of those getting peeled back. She doesn't have a lot of personality here at the beginning when she's introduced in Iron Man 2, but I think a part of that is, I think that's part of her charm. I think, especially knowing her history, as we learn later, watching back on this movie, I mean, it's all of her training to be kind of blended in and beast it out whenever she needs to. Especially the scene when she takes on all of the security guards basically effortlessly. While Happy takes down one, she takes down about 12. And that's a really kick-ass action scene, especially from a female perspective, because of course, like, everybody underrates her throughout the entire film until, like, we actually learn her identity as Black Widow. I really like her introduction. Of course, her character just gets better with age throughout the films, so I think that this is a really great start for her, especially without having a lot of the backstory. I also really love Don Cheadle's portrayal of Rhodey in this film. Honestly, I think he does a better job, primarily because I think he is a better goody two-shoe than Terrence Howard is, because there's this internal struggle within him to be the good old boy, military man, following the rules, but then also being a loyal friend to Tony. And I think Don just does a much better job of that through Iron Man, at least the start of Iron Man 2. We see that in the beginning with when he's sitting in front of the Armed Service Committee, and he's literally sitting in the middle of the two powers that be, and he has a stake in both sides. And he genuinely just wants the truth to be put out there. That's all he cares about. And I think that that's very admirable. And then we get to the scene where Tony's drunk at his own party and they end up fighting. And that is a great scene. I think this is one of the first times we're seeing multiple Avengers fight each other, which is one of my favorite things about the Avengers movies later on. So this is kind of giving us a taste of, even if you are on the same side of the fight, you can still butt heads and really do an all-out brawl and have it be amazing. You don't have to be villains to have a really great fight scene. So I really love that, but it's also good foreshadowing for the later scene in the movie where they realize that they're stronger when they're on the same side, fighting for the same cause instead of fighting each other. And they ultimately come out victorious. So I think that that's a really great message, and honestly, it's nice to see when you have your friends fighting. And I don't think everybody in Tony's circle needs to agree with him. He has enough money to buy people that can agree with him. Now, for Enchanting Efforts, honestly, I feel like a lot of the work that Tony did in the first movie gets a little bit undone with the second. And the reason why I say that is because there's this huge character arc for Tony in the first film where he decides that he's going to use his money and his influence for good and to protect the people that he puts in harm's way. But then we get into Iron Man 2 and clearly there's a mental struggle within him, but it's almost like he's reverting back into his old playboy, narcissistic ways. I think a part of that is Tony's charm. I think that's a big reason why we love him, because he's that kind of just jackass superhero. It almost feels like we're redoing all of the character building that we did in the first movie. Like, I feel like it's the same movie almost. Like, he realizes that he has much more to fight for than just himself, and then he does. I don't know. The storyline of character for Tony feels just like a repeat. It feels redundant. So his plotline specifically, to me, isn't the most interesting thing about the movie. But I think still his character is, which is, I feel like contradictory or hypocritical, but maybe that's just how my mind works. I don't know. Mickey Rourke is a terrible actor. Just gonna put that out there. I don't think there's very many people who disagree. Honestly, I don't even really think we needed his character. There was too many plot lines, too many villains. I mean, like, he and Hammer join up and, like, fight Tony Stark later on, but really you could just have Hammer doing that. Maybe if there was a better actor, or if the story was written better for them, or for Ivan, maybe I'd feel a little bit differently, but I don't know. I just don't feel like his story is really necessary, because the whole, like, his father was cheated by Howard Stark, but then it ends up being, like, kind of sort of not true, but we're just gonna brush it under the rug anyway. Like, I just don't think that that's important to Tony's or Iron Man's overall story versus, like, Hammer Industries being a copycat discount version of Stark Industries. It doesn't entertain me as much as Hammer does. And even then, we're repeating some of the villain stuff too. Like, I realized this time watching the movie, at the end, when Iron Man and War Machine are fighting all of the drone Iron Mans, or I never really remember what we're actually calling those. Ivan's little head thing comes off. First of all, his hair is too perfect in that little man bun under there. If he was sweating in that wannabe Iron Man suit, his hair would be like all frizzy and like super fucked up. I don't believe you, Ivan, that you were actually in there or actually trying that hard. But the whole sequence of the helmet coming off, we already saw that with Obadiah in the first Iron Man. So I don't, like, even that wasn't even that big of a reveal. It felt like reused. Like, I'm all about recycling, but like, let's come up with a few more creative ideas. I also hate looking at Senator Stern's face. Like, and I feel really bad because I think this is just who he is as a person, but his face looks like a butthole. Like, it looks so puckered the entire time. Like, it just bothers the crap out of me. And I think somewhat that plays into his character, and so, like, I see why they casted that person as Senator Stern. Ugh, I just hate looking at his face. Thank God he is not in this movie that much. I also realized that watching these movies in chronological order, it makes a lot more sense when Nick Fury just kind of like shows up at the donut shop. Like, if you were just watching this in release order, this is the first movie that Nick Fury is introduced. And it feels like he just comes out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden Natasha Romanoff is a double agent and Coulson is there too. It just feels very like super forced to try to go ahead and quick start the Avengers initiative within the series, which I can appreciate. I'm excited about a setup for the Avengers themselves, that portion of the MCU, but it feels very locked in with so many other things going on in this movie. We've got Tony with his internal like mental health struggle. We've got Pepper Potts. I know! We've got Pepper Potts trying to make it as CEO. We've got Ivan Vanko trying to find his bird. And also avenge his father. But you know, that's just kind of part of it. We've got Justin Hammer trying to be the new Tony Stark. We've got the military trying to blame Tony for wars. There's just so many things going on in this film. It feels like it's too much packed into 2 hours. I feel like there were so many things that were done and everything is just okay. I think it's a good movie when they could have just honed in on 2 or 3 different plots and like really made it good. And so that's just kind of what I'm missing with this film, is just some breakdown, really focus on what's important, not try to overcomplicate the story when half of this stuff isn't even really relevant to the entire MCU anyway, versus like Captain America, like it's all MCU prep basically. So I think that there's a good balance, and I just don't know if we hit it really well with this one. So as far as my VMP, I actually had a hard time picking one for the same reason. I thought everybody was just kind of okay. I then narrowed it down between Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. Pepper, I think, was showcased a little bit more in this movie, which I appreciated, but I think I'm gonna go with Tony. While his storyline wasn't as impressive this time as it was in the first Iron Man film, I think one of the big themes that he brings us for the MCU is that it's not the suit that makes Tony Iron Man. He is incredibly intelligent. He is not perfect. Again, he has a lot of internal struggle going on. And then we have his father from beyond the grave bringing him back into reality to help him invent this whole new element that's eventually going to save Tony's life. So that whole process I really enjoyed. I think that's what is going to set Tony apart from the other characters in this movie, and still somewhat redeem the movie for me. Okay, so that brings us to our last segment where we're ranking our MCU films so far. This one was relatively easy for me. I'm gonna keep Iron Man at the top, then Captain America First Avenger, then Captain Marvel, and end it on Iron Man 2. By no means do I think that this is my least favorite movie in the entire series, so you'll have to stick around to see where it ends up in the final list. But I love when you guys comment your thoughts and your rankings on these videos. I really love having constructive conversation about what we think about our favorite films and what really drives us to like or not like certain parts of the movies. Drop a comment below, like and subscribe so I can make sure that I'm sticking to content and formats that you guys enjoy. And while you're at it, make sure to follow me on all the social medias at MagicXMolly. Why are you licking me, girl? Hey, come on, Peppa. Can't have an Iron Man movie review without Peppa Pot. Alright, thanks everybody. I hope you have a really wonderful week. And remember, stay weird and don't be a turd. Bye-bye, Meaty. Bye, Meaty. You're beautiful. I'll see you later.